Hey, my name is Marc Stoiber, and I am a fractional revenue architect.
Hi, I'm Lorraine McGregor. I'm CEO of Spirit West, and we help companies grow and get ready to become saleable.
That's right. The title of the show is Where Growth Stalls. So actually, we look at where the growth stalls, and hopefully we come up with the tips and tricks to help make the company saleable. But what we want to talk about with our special guest is the hidden operating system that determine what company scales or stalls. So why is it that smart companies with good products, good people, real demand still manage to stall out? And why do the usual fixes, which is more sales, more strategy, more work, sometimes start to work in reverse, often making things worse? Now, our guest today says the real issue isn't what happens on the surface, it's the invisible operating system or lack thereof that is underneath. So with that, I want to introduce Joel Marc. Joel, say a few words. Let everybody know who you are and what you do best.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Lorraine. Thanks for having me on. My name is Joel. I'm a business operating systems designer. I've been working scale ups for the last 15 years or so. And yes, as you say, I've seen a lot of businesses stall out as they are growing and they start adding more systems and processes and things to it in a desperate attempt to return themselves to growth. And through my research and through my work, I really discovered that the problem is not that the business isn't doing the right things. The problem is that it's the underlying behaviors and the underlying rules that are almost subconscious to the business. That's the operating system layer, because every business has an operating system. It's just unconscious. It's just something that is out of the founder's behaviors, the founder's desires, the founder's skill set. And over time, those things create drag because they're overly inefficient to what the business actually needs to get it to that next level.
That sounds like a hard problem to solve.
How do you know if you have a system that's helping or working against you?
Yeah, I mean, it shows up really commonly in your scalability hits a ceiling, your growth slows, you start to flatline. You see founder decision-making bottlenecks where decisions take longer to get done. You see projects that stall out in their momentum. You see resources split across too many things that don't actually lead to a positive result. You see aggressive context switching of the founder or CEO or leadership team between multiple different things. It shows up in many ways that feel like drag, and they're just dragging. They're slowing things down. And this is, really the fundamental issue, is that those unintentional behaviors and those unintentional rules that you've set in place that you're not even fully aware of, those are the things that I look to remove. So the inverse to that is bringing intention. So we kind of shine a light on everything. We look at the rules and behaviors of what create a business, and we become intentional about it. And we say, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. This is when it's going to be done. This is who's accountable for it. And this is what success looks like. And when we're that intentional about all these core operating pieces that run a business, your success becomes much more predictable. You know exactly where the drag is and how to cut it off.
Well, Joel, Mark and I were interviewing a private equity buyer the other day, and he said one of his most important tells when he goes into a business about how saleable it is, how interested they are, is, the global world culture. He unpacked that for us. So when you don't have a good operating system, what happens to the culture, the relationships, how people communicate, the behavior, the attitudes? What do you notice?
Yeah, you start to see a morale drop pretty quickly because, at the end of the day, people want to feel like they're contributing to something, right? Like, yes, everyone needs a job, but at the end of the day, they really want to matter. They really want to have an impact in an area of their domain expertise. And when they see that their effort that they're applying to their job, to their work, is not resulting in the success that the founder or leadership team wants, that becomes very demoralizing. And that becomes like, well, why am I working so hard on this? Or, if it's not actually leading to success, like, it's really harmful. And so you see a culture then of apathy start to develop. And, it's on one side, you have the leadership team and founder saying, guys, we got to hustle here. Like, we need to make up sales. And on the other side, you have this drag of the team being like, well, we did this before and you changed your mind 30 days later, or you pivoted out of that so quickly we couldn't see it, to success. And so this is kind of the tension between the leadership team and the people that are working hard on the nuts and bolts in aligning those behaviors and aligning those expectations in something where all ends of the workplace knows very clearly what you're working towards and what success looks like.
I was working with a 13-person management team, and that very problem cropped up where everybody was at this point so cynical and so demoralized, as you say, by the lack of good communication systems, who was supposed to do what for whom by when, that they started to make fun of their own tagline, their value proposition.
Wow. Yeah.
And they were in line to grow more stores in their chain. And their inability to come together as a team with a system made the parent company take a very long time before giving that to them. So where have you seen this? Just small companies, big companies? Tell us a story.
Yeah. So I see it most in companies that have proven product market fit. They've had some initial success, and the founder or CEO has grown the business by sheer force of will, which is usually how startups happen. And he hits a point, he or she hits a point where they can't be in every single meeting. They can't make every single decision. And at that point, that's where you see growth start to be bottlenecked behind the CEO. And so that's where that time to say, hey, how do I delegate and elevate into these other areas of the business? Who do I hire that can come in and take off these things that I can do but probably shouldn't? And that process just creates more capacity for growth. I'll tell you a story. I was working with a founder of a marketing agency. He was very specialized in a particular domain in a particular industry. And he had done just this, grown it through sheer force of will. He had a ton of clients. And I came in and I sat down and I was looking through his metrics, and his churn rate was like super high, more than 50%. I was like, yo, what's up with your churn rate? And he's like, oh, it's, no big deal. Like, I'm adding so many new clients to roster. I'm not really worried about it. And I said, hey, like, yes, but there is an issue here, because why are they churning? And he's like, well, I can't get to all the delivery of the things that they need. So I'm like, well, why are you delivering the things that they need? You're the founder. And there was this tension of, growing this business and being the guy that was kind of responsible for wearing many hats, and then having to delegate that to other people in a way that he felt like the work was going to get done to the way that he'd do it. The irony is that the work wasn't being done because he didn't have the time to do it. So his fear that the work wasn't going to be done to the level that he could do it was kind of this, this
self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Exactly. And so when we went in, we looked at his operating system and we looked at kind of the unintentional behaviors that were happening like this. One of the things we discovered was that he had this core value of hospitality. And, he always had this dream of opening a bakery. And I was like, wow, you're a marketing guy, but you want to open a bakery. Why? And he's like, well, there's just this feeling of hospitality. You come into a great bakery, it smells good. It's just very relaxing, and people are happy and friendly. And he's like, that energy really suits me. And I was like, why don't you apply that to your marketing agency? Apply that to your clients. And it was like a light bulb moment for him. And so he had this unintentional behavior in him that he needed to kind of verbalize. And when he did that, the first thing he did was hire a customer success manager who came in, like, righted the clients, put them on the right track. And now his retention rate is like near 100%. So that's a good example of how something is unintentional because of some blockers that the person has. And you kind of lead that into intentionality, which then creates the success that you want.
I have a question about a few things you said. Is there a magic person that can come in and fix a company where the operating system is haphazard or not visible, as you say, not intentional? Is there somebody like that, or does that just provide false expectations?
I mean, I don't know if you're teeing me up there, but that's essentially what I do. I mean, there's nothing magic about it. It's really like I'm more of a detective. I come in with a magnifying glass and I put the magnifying glass over all the things that, get missed in the operational day to day. And so, we look at where your long-term vision is. Where do you want to be? We look at what your operating protocols, your behaviors that when push comes to shove, you're going to always choose hospitality or you're always going to choose respect. We look at your structural capabilities, which are your core competitive advantage. It blows my mind how many businesses sell stuff, but don't really know how they're competitive. They're like, oh, well, we have the best price. That's not a competitive advantage as a strategy. And so I look at these areas and say, let's be intentional about it. Let's write it down. Let's put it in a plan. And then let's create some executional activities out of that.
Joel, I have to point this out. So I've seen this problem in all the companies I've worked with over the years, and I know that's part of the reason they stall, plus value proposition, plus a bunch of other things. But I also notice this human dynamic that occurs. Resistance to change. If I decide to change, I'm real happy with that. But if someone comes in, a consultant, and we're all those kind of people, and say, hey, this is what's the problem. You guys have to change. How do you navigate that? And how do you find those companies and owners that are willing? What is it for them that finally makes them go, okay, this isn't working. I need help.
Yeah. So there are some people, I'll say this straight out, there are some founders that won't ever cross that gap. I think we should all be aware of is that there are personalities that don't want to. And for the folks that do, that want to get better, grow faster, let go of control, I always point them to Noam Wasserman's Harvard Business Review article, The Founder's Dilemma. And he teased this up exactly with this question of, do you want to be rich or do you want to be king? Because you can't be both. No one short of Zuckerberg or Musk can be both. And so there's a trade-off between being rich and being king. King, you have absolute dominant control over your little kingdom, but you can't scale that. You can't scale yourself as a king. The secret to being rich as a founder is to delegate, is to replicate yourself, to pass off control so that more people can do more things in the hours that you don't have available to you. So I usually start there with that context and I tee it up. I'm like, look, if you want to be king, you can build your little kingdom. We'll help you out. You'll hit $3 million or $5 million. And you have a nice little thing there. But if you want to get to 20 or 50 or 100 million, you want to be rich, that's a whole different game here. And so to do that, an operating system helps you let go of control in these key targeted areas where you can see it's not just going into the ether, it's connected to a result. There's someone that has accountability for that thing that you're letting go of control of, and they're responsible for actually delivering on it.
In your stories, how quickly do the founders actually start to see something where they go, this might actually work? Because I have a funny feeling that these people will only believe one thing, which is it's actually working. If you're taking them on a long walk, they'll give up and go back to being the king who thinks he's a servant.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'll say this straight up. I don't tell anybody to give up control. The reason founders started the business was because they didn't want a boss, right? So that is the end result of what happens. But by the time the founder gets there, they're like, oh my God, I'm so glad I let go of that thing. It's not even, a choice at that point. It's like, that was the best decision I've ever made. So the process to get there, which is what you're talking about, is really around the understanding of waste and restriction. And so one of the founders of business operating systems as a concept was a guy by the name of Tachi Ono, who was the creator of Toyota's production system. This is back in the 50s and 60s. And, he was kind of one of the first guys who brought this idea of operating logic and the best way of doing a particular job into a cohesive system that Toyota was able to basically become the dominant automaker in the world. And that was post-war when Japan had very limited raw materials and resources available to them. That restriction created this environment for Toyota to look and say, hey, if we have to cut out a piece of sheet metal and there's all these bits and ends that are going in the bin that are not getting used, but our resources are constrained, how do we reuse those? And they took this perspective of waste and inefficiency. Where do we find waste and inefficiency in absolutely everything that we do so that our constraints actually don't limit us from achieving our results? For founders, they have those same constraints. They have cash flow constraints. They have time constraints. And very quickly, what I do is I go in and I say, show me your calendar, founder. And I look at it, it's jam-packed with like a million things. And I take it to it. I'm like, you don't need to involve in this. You can let go of that. And they're like, really? But like, what about this? I'm like, well, this is where that's going to like get taken care of. And so very quickly they start seeing, oh, there is waste here. And oh, there is inefficiency here. They've just like never looked at kind of the ends of the sheet metal that are getting cut off. They're just like moving from fire to fire to fire. So the process is really around collectively and collaboratively looking at where's there waste and inefficiency in your operating system right now? And how do we use the exact same resources that you have to get faster to the result that you want?
Fascinating. In project management, I am a project manager first. We always look for the critical path, which is what's the top priority? And if we don't do that for our own time, we're always surfing, not having met our goals, and then examining our failures and disappointments because we never reach our goals. And that gap and gain psychology is very difficult on the morale of an organization. So this operating system, that whether it's intentional or not, really fuels so many parts of growth, morale, culture, relationships, decision-making, delegating. It really is the heartbeat of the company. And if it's needs to be brought back to life on a regular basis, that's difficult for anybody to manage.
It's true. There is like the word heartbeat is really key there. In a lot of times, founders and leaders struggle with focus. A lot of the founders that I work with today have ADHD. And, what's really interesting there is if there is neurodiversity in a founder, they struggle with structure. And so the focus bit is really challenging. And especially in our AI dominated world where change is happening so quickly, shiny object syndrome is real. You don't know whether you should be jumping into this thing or that thing. And focus just becomes really difficult. And that context switching that I talked about earlier inevitably creates drag on the growth of the organization. And so one of the things that an intentional operating system does is it creates a lot of certainty and a lot of confidence in the founder around where their focus is, because they've articulated it very clearly and they've spent the time to feel really excited about that. Like the founder who chose hospitality and then brought that into his marketing agency, he feels great waking up every day knowing that that's baked into everything that his team is doing. And so when these things pop up that are opportunistic, it's a lot easier and faster for the founder to be like, nope, that doesn't fit. And they feel good about it and they move on rather than like, God, should we be doing this? Should we not be doing it? They don't have a reference point to kind of measure against. An intentional operating system gives you that certainty and confidence to know that you're going in the right.
I love this. And I think it's crucial. I know it's crucial for companies if they want to become saleable, but grow and be more profitable. I've met large companies that think they have intentional operating systems. And it's clear to me that there's a lot of inefficiency, lack of productivity, lack of self-responsibility because no one knows who to blame or who has responsibilities. I always think about growth as, the silos stay the same, but the gaps between the silos get wider and wider. What do you see when you work with larger businesses? Is it the same issues? What does it look like when it's not working well?
Yeah. So there's a lot of similarities. It just happens at scale, and then it's harder to change because you're trying to, turn the whole ship, at the same time. So one of the unique things about my model that I created is that it puts your structural capabilities at the center of the model. Like there's lots of kind of to-do list type processes that you can do out there to get things done, but that doesn't really help you become, a market dominant player. And the businesses that I work with want to become a market dominant player in their domain. And so to do that, your competitive advantage works out to 2 to 3 structural capabilities that reinforce themselves over and over time. The more that you put into it, the more that the value of that compounds, and it makes it much harder for competitors to catch up to. For big organizations, oftentimes they have the values, they have their 10-year mission sorted out, but they don't really know, they haven't really articulated and put a flag in the sand and said, this is where we are going to win. This is our competitive advantage. These are the 3 things that we do better than anybody else. Once that process is done, everything in the organization rolls back up. You have to defend your budget. You have to defend your project. You have to defend your hires against which structural capability those resource requests support. That then just creates a network effect within the organization where everyone's rowing towards the same competitive advantage. Imagine that. If you have an organization of 100 or 200 people and they're all individually contributing to your core competitive advantage, mind blowing, right? But that's exactly what Toyota did. Every person in their organization continually is able to make changes and make suggestions to the way that their processes operate. And so Toyota solicits thousands and thousands of incremental improvements that reinforce their competitive advantage every year because they've created a culture that reinforces that structural capability of having the team contribute to the progress of the organization.
I look at this and I know the Toyota case, it was a long walk. And you just said a little while ago, you work with a lot of founders who have ADHD. I think the world has ADHD. Is shiny object syndrome the enemy of getting this stuff done? Is it, I could imagine you said you got to buckle down on efficiency in the production line. And I go, that's great. We're all going to focus on that. And then 2 weeks later, I go, yeah, but is that it? Are we putting our bet on the wrong horse? And I could just see this straight line becoming a zigzag and losing focus and forgetting why you're there in the first place. Do you see that happening?
Yeah. So the reason that happens is because you haven't sold yourself as the founder on your core structural capabilities. So what that means is you need to wake up every day and so believe in your competitive advantage that you're like, no shiny object will distract you. Like that's what you need to get to. I did a workshop with 8 businesses at once. It's the first time I've done 8 at once. I usually work one-on-one with a founder team. And so we tackled their structural capabilities together and we were paired up. And it was remarkable how many of the founders started with being like, oh, well, my capability is this product. And I was like, no, that's not a capability. Like anybody can build a product. Like your competitors are building that right now. Why did you create that product? What is the thinking above it that resulted in that? And they're like, oh, well, we decided that if our clients had access to real-time data analysis that was contextual to the environment that they were in, they would make decisions much faster, which would result in an increase of productivity. I was like, well, that's a structural capability. That's your competitive advantage. Like, write that as something that you can reinforce.
Do they run right past that because they assume that that's just, yeah, that's where we started. So it's probably ordinary. And so they just walk right past it and go to the new model with all the new chrome and the new bumpers.
Exactly. Because most people that start businesses are product people, right? They're engineers, they're designers, they build things. And so they don't naturally think about why they built them after they've built it. And so the process there is to like unpack that and articulate it. Because when you do, in the case of This founder on the data analysis front, he was like, oh my gosh, like immediately the light bulb went on and he thought, I can build 6 products like that. And all of a sudden you just saw the roadmap unfolding in front of him because he articulated the value, the competitive advantage, the structural thinking that was a level higher than the product itself. So that process, taking that time, sitting down, like I do this work over a 2-day workshop. And, some people are like, 2 days, oh my God, I can't spend, like you have to spend time on it. If you spend the time thinking through this and like articulating it, you have all the confidence in the world after that, that shiny objects don't matter. Like if they do pop up, you're like, oh, that one's good. That one's not.
Yeah. Again, the confidence in your decision making when you have a system goes way up. So now you can take more risks because your team's there. They know they're following the system. I mean, this is the recipe for growth. And this is the recipe to become saleable. And this is what makes a business attractive to buyers. So all of these benefits, and I will say it will increase your gross margin and your bottom line. So Joel, how long does it take for a company to forget they have an operating system?
Well, I mean, like I said, everyone starts with an unintentional one. After working with me, once that's set up, I have regular check-ins with the founder team because it is easy to get distracted and get off the rails. So, I work with founder teams to keep them accountable to the work that they've done and to build those behaviors because it does take time. Marc kind of alluded to it with Toyota, like it was a generational process and Toyota worked on this over decades. And that's something that we as North American businesses often don't think about is setting up businesses for the long term. We think in quarters, we think in annual reports, but the businesses that become market dominant, like really do take a long view. And so that work of creating behavioral consistency and behavioral change just gets easier the more that you do it. It's like going to the gym. You get stronger the more that you go into the gym. The more that you do the reps, the more that you work out, the stronger you get. The same applies with an operating system. The more that you're in it, the more that you use it, the more that you reinforce it, the easier and stronger it becomes to run. And culturally, it changes you organically to kind of be focused on that.
Wow. So important. I know when I work out consistently, I feel better all the way around. And then I have more confidence to do all the other things in my life, like have fun.
Honestly, like that's a really good point because founders, one of the things they say is like, I have time back in my schedule going on. Like, and they never say that, right? So that's a huge benefit is removing that inefficiency and getting them time back to focus on the things that truly makes them happy.
Wonderful investment of time, energy, and persistence and consistency for those that want to grow to the next level. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective on how this happens. And it's always fascinating to talk to you, Joel. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thanks so much.